Hi guys, I'm back for day number 4 and this is tip number 4 of my 14-day creative writing journey where I want to help other writers, other aspiring writers to really craft and shape their storytelling skills. So just to recap, day number 1 we looked at how to generate a story from a title prompt. Day number 2, tip number 2, we looked at how we can then use an idea from the title prompt idea generation to be able to create a plot, and how we can look at shaping different things like characters and narratives. On day number 3, we looked at putting that into some kind of baseline. So we looked at how we can create a story by setting out a beginning, a middle and an end, just as a base, a start to work from. Now we're at day number 4 and we're going to be looking at something a little bit juicier, which is character development. Now, when I talk about character development, I'm talking about their profiles. I am looking at how you can really create this character to resonate with it, to understand it, and to really fall in love with your character. Whether they're good guys or bad guys, you need to really feel a sense of that character and feel a part of them. And this is why character profiles are so important. Now, you might feel this is unnecessary, and I get that. I thought it was, and then I made a mistake with my first novel where I got a reference wrong to one of my characters and had to go back and completely write a whole section again. What happened was I had a particular date that was relevant to the story and I got the age wrong of this particular character because I didn't get the date of birth and the actual present day right. Anyway, so I had to rewrite the whole thing. Now, if I had my character profile ready and if I'd already got this written down and understood it, I would have known that I was making that mistake as I went along, so it was an integral part of the plot. So having these ready in the beginning, having a list of characters and having profiles about them will really help you. And I'll go into a little bit about what you can put on your profile in a minute. But just before we do that, I want to pose the idea of having an antagonist and a protagonist in your story as well, which is basically the bad guy and the good guy. So I want you to think about whether it would be relevant to choose these at this point and have these people on board, because having a good guy and a bad guy can really set aside some drama, can really put some oomph into your story and really help you with your plot twists and help you to understand who is really on the right side here and where do they sit in terms of their character description and their character development. If you don't want to do that, if you don't want to commit to that, that's fine. You can think about that later on. Or it could be that a character could develop into a bad guy later on when they're actually a good guy in the beginning. But to have somewhere to start, to have a starting point, may really help you in terms of shaping that drama and that suspense in your story. So now we've discussed that, we can go back to the actual profile. Now, what I was suggesting creating a character profile is create a sheet for each person, whether it's on your laptop, in a book, whichever it might be. And not only discuss the physical attributes, but also discuss the relational side of things, like who are they connected with, who their friends are, who their family are, and all those side of things. And then go on to the behavioural sides as well. So like, how do they act in situations? What would they do in certain situations? Have they got a short temper? Have they got are they very patient? Are they kind? How do they sort of interact with people normally? Are they shy? Are they an extrovert? How are these people on a day-to-day basis? And then add things like where they live, where they grew up, what date they was born. Remember, that's very important. I've learned from that mistake. And just think about all the practical things that you'd need to know about the person. So think of like what you'd see on their, I don't know, on their passport or their, you know, on their professional documents. What would you see? But then also think about the softer side of stuff, the soft sell stuff, like how they behave and the psychological stuff. And this will really start to help pad out your story. And it may be that you want to just start with like 10 examples of different things that combine all those elements, and then go from there. And if you develop a template for each one, for each character, then you'll have something in mind of what you need to do when you're building other characters in. Now, you don't have to know all your characters at this stage, of course you don't. You're just sort of like developing a sense of the base of your story. But to start with this template and to start to really understand where you are and how you can shape it and who your characters are will really help from when you're moving it forward later on. Because when a new character comes in and is introduced, you can immediately go to your template and start plotting that character out and thinking about this. And of course, these characters can change. So if you decide later on that actually they're not exactly what you thought they were on their profile, it can be changed. So it's not set in concrete or anything like that, but it gives you something to work from, and it helps you to not make mistakes later on when you're thinking that they're born on a certain date when they're not, and you've got your facts a little bit wrong. It is basically to make sure that there is some continuity in your story as well. Another thing that I did find once that I found really confusing, you might want to think about this, is when two characters have very similar names, because it would be very easy to mix those names up. So just be aware of characters that are similar in name, and if it's easy for me or yourself to get mixed up as a writer, how easy is it for your reader to get mixed up with those names if they're so similar? So just something else to think about. So I'd like to bring Steve into this scenario as well. If you've watched the other videos, you'll understand that Steve is from my title prompt, Finding Steve. He's someone who is presumed dead and mediums are looking for him to find him. But actually the plot and the end story is about him being very much alive. So with the story around Steve is one of the characters. You don't know that, but you can plot him out in terms of how he was, how he looked like, how he looked, what relationships he had with different people and all the rest of it. So you can plot him out and you can understand, the person that you're thinking about when you're thinking about Steve. I would bring in my story example, I would bring in the person who is looking for him. So I'm going to name her Pam. She's going to be called Pam. So Pam's the person going to the spiritualist church and she's looking for a medium who can find Steve. And then I'm going to bring in somebody who is an antagonist, a bit of a bad guy, a medium who is actually saying they can speak to Steve. Well, actually they can't, they're making it all up. But you get the drift. So they're three characters I can work with straight away and start plotting them out, so I get a bit of an understanding about this as I go further forward. Anyway, poor Steve gets dragged into everything, but he's alive, so we'll give him that. Anyway, that comes to the end of my day 4, and I hope these tips help, and I hope they help you to shape and craft your story. And I'll be back tomorrow for day 5.